Hey there, Sports Insider. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe. Packed show for you today, as always. We're going to lead it off talking Cavaliers. Joe Vardon's going to join us. Then we've got Mary Kay Cabot to talk about Josh McCown. I know Fedor here is a big Josh McCown fan.
Can't wait.
And then we'll wrap it up, talk some spring training with Paul Hoynes. But as promised, we're going to get things going right away with Joe Vardon, our Cavaliers and LeBron reporter. He joins us by phone from Toronto. Joe, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
You got it, eh?
Well done, well done.
So the Cavaliers, Joe, are in this tough stretch of games. They had Toronto last night. They've got Atlanta tomorrow night. The two top teams in the East. Well, not anymore. Toronto's now number 3. Just how big was that win for this basketball team yesterday?
Yeah, it was a good win, and it could have been a disastrous loss. You were up 19, and the Raptors didn't have Kyle Lowry. It was, Fedor knows this feeling well. For a while, it was one of those games where the Cavs were so obviously toying with Toronto, and you're expecting all the starters to be out of the game by the start of the fourth quarter, and you just kind of move on. And all of a sudden, the roof collapsed. And, now you're talking about being in a really tight game on the road, in a game you had to have, in a game that you should have had in the bank. So, looking back now that it's over, it's a good win. It's an important win, but they averted disaster.
When it comes to LeBron in the fourth quarter, Joe, what do you think changed in his mindset? It seemed like in the first 3 quarters he was kind of feeling things out. He was trying to get his teammates involved. What do you think changed in the fourth?
I think that he just sensed that it was time for him to attack. He knows, we all know, that Kevin Love, for all the good things that he brings to the team, and he really does. I don't want to lose sight of that. But he has problems in the fourth quarter. Kyrie Irving doesn't necessarily have those same problems, but just collectively, things had slowed to a crawl for the Cavs. And LeBron knew at that point that he was the one who could kind of shake things up. And, I forget I know the score was 97-all when he just went nuts. There was an assist on a 3 and then a couple threes of his own, and he had just taken over, and it was just one of those times where he sensed this was his opportunity to do that.
Joe, there's been a lot of talk about LeBron-James and hard fouls. He got kicked in a certain area by James Harden. Hard fouls last night. Somewhere Michael Jordan is just kind of laughing about all of this, but are you seeing this more and more with treatment of LeBron James? Teams are going to go after him and try and be really, really physical with him.
Well, there's 2 things, Dan. The first is if you whack him, you're not going to get anything back from the Cavs. And then the second thing is that LeBron may very well miss those free throws. It's happened twice. The first was on Sunday in Houston. And it was just a weird day. It was a weird play. But LeBron went up there and he missed his 2 free throws on the technical. And then the same thing happened last night. And, you can deter that behavior to some extent by making the foul shots. But I don't think that making more free throws would stop the hard fouls. And the way that you do that is, it's like baseball or like hockey. Teams think more closely and clearly about such plays when they know that they would get it in return. And to this point, no one has gotten anything in return from the Cavs when the best guy has gotten whacked like that. Let's not forget, too, that Kyrie got thumped in the first half, and, that one went unchecked as well.
All right, Joe, so as the Cavs were trying to hold off the Toronto Raptors in the fourth quarter, and the Cavs were in the midst of their best offensive quarter of the night, all I was getting in the comment section at cleveland.com and in my mentions on Twitter, where is Timofey Mozgov? Why is Mozgov not in the game? Like, he turned into the reincarnation of Kevin Garnett in his prime and Tim Duncan in his prime. So I'll ask you the question. Why no Mozgov late in games for the Cavs?
It's a fair question, and it's one that it's getting to a point where it needs to be asked, because this is a couple times in a row now where it's been close, and David Blatt, who loves Timofey, has gone away from them. They really like Tristan Thompson, for one. I guess they feel like he gives them a little more versatility offensively, which I guess is hard to figure out, just because Timofey has a mid-range jumper that Tristan doesn't. Tristan catches the ball better in the post, and so maybe the thought is, in situations like that, they want him to be able to catch someone who can catch the ball a little bit and maybe move a little better. But, to say those things would be to suggest that Timofey doesn't move well or that doesn't play well offensively, which of course he does. And he also, he's, as we've said over and over again, he's changed them defensively. So, I'm not sure that I have an answer for this. They almost won Sunday in a tough game without Kyrie going this way, and they won last night. So, David Blatt has shown he's not afraid to go with a lineup that he sees fit. He's not afraid to bench Kevin Love when it matters. Timofey's on that list now. He likes James Jones a lot more now than he did. And he's also not he'll take the criticism for it.
Joe, isn't part of it too? Basketball's a game of rhythm. It's a game of momentum. And if you've got a group out there that's working, unless you're talking about leaving LeBron-James on the bench or Kyrie Irving on the bench, you're going to stick with that unit that's working.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. They, occasionally they like to go small. And I think in games against athletic teams, and, Toronto really runs. Even without Kyle Lowry, they run. They run all over the place. Lou Williams can get up and down coming off the bench. And so, yeah, there's David certainly likes to match up small when the situation calls for it. So it could be as simple as that. It could just be, Toronto is really getting us into a transition game, and rather than trying to reverse that, let's just stick with it and go with personnel that just better matches up small overall. It could be as simple as that.
Joe, we've spent so much time talking about which team from the Eastern Conference would be the toughest test for the Cavs if they were to see them in a 7-game series. We've talked about Atlanta and Chicago and even Toronto a little bit. How about if the Cavs get to the finals? From what you've seen, just being around the NBA, watching the NBA, the teams from the Western Conference, is there one team that really stands out to you, one team that jumps off the page more than anyone else?
Well, you got to love the Western Conference. There's just so many good teams over there to watch. Golden State is not one that scares me from a Cavs perspective. Without LeBron, they were right there for 3+ quarters out in San Francisco or in Oakland, and then we saw what happened the other night. So they're not on my list. Let's keep an eye on Memphis. When Memphis was in Cleveland way back when, Zach Randolph didn't play, and the Cavs sort of had their way. Let's see what happens here at the end of the month, or closer to the end of the month, when the Cavs go to Memphis. They're a really good team. There's one to keep an eye on. And the other one, I think, is Houston. They're just tough. And, they didn't have Dwight Howard that night. That's really, that could be a tough matchup if we get all the way to the finals.
What about a team like Oklahoma City, Joe, if they can get healthy and if they can get through the West?
Yeah, I really like them too, and I really like them as a sleeper in the West. Not much of a sleeper when you have Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook, but from a seeding perspective, I really like them. But I'm not sure that they could cause problems for the Cavs either, just because their best two positions are basically the Cavs' best two positions. And, you just have to say, and it's been proven this way, that LeBron and Kyrie, are an excellent matchup for Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant. So I think it would be awesome to watch, but I would go with the Cavs there. The Rockets really concern me. I'm interested in Memphis, and then those are probably my top two right now.
All right, Joe Vardon, he covers LeBron James and the Cavaliers for us here at cleveland.com. Thanks for the time, Joe.
Hey, anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right, Cavaliers. Who scares you out of the West?
He forgot one.
All right.
Because if you go back to 2010, 2011, when Miami finally first got together, they got to the NBA Finals and they played against Dallas, and so many people overlooked Dallas, right? I think the team that so many people are overlooking right now is Portland.
That's true.
Portland is very Dallas-like to me. Heck, their head coach was an assistant on that team that took down Miami. But they've got the shooting, they've got the 1-2 punch of Damian Lillard, LaMarcus Aldridge. For stretches of games, Aldridge can take over the way that Dirk did. They've got the long, athletic defender in Nicolas Batum, who could play that Sean Marion-type role against the Cavs. They're defensively sound, top 10 in defense. Man, that team, I think too many people are sleeping on that team. And the big thing is they got past the first round last year. They got a taste of having to play against San Antonio. I think that playoff experience is going to help them. They added Aaron Aflalo. Portland's my team. I think they're Dallas.
And we know that Kyrie Irving and Damian Lillard, when they get together, they love to put on shows. Let's switch gears and let's talk Browns. We'll bring in our Browns beat reporter, Mary Kay Cabot, to join us. Mary Kay, how are you?
I'm doing great, guys. How you doing?
All right, Mary Kay. Oh, all right, we got to start here. Try and sell me on Josh McCown. Why was Josh McCown the right move for the Cleveland Browns?
You know what? The people that I've talked to in the league this week, I've talked to a couple of really well-respected, let's say NFL coaches. I don't want to say whether they're head coaches, coordinators, or whatever, but I've talked to a couple of people at that level that have said if they had a choice and they had to start a game tomorrow, and they had Brian Hoyer or Josh McCown, I've had people say that they would rather have Josh McCown in that role. I think the thing to look at here is not so much Brian Hoyer versus Josh McCown, but what they represent and the opportunities that they wanted. Brian Hoyer wants to go somewhere and start. Josh McCown is willing to come here and get paid $6.25 million, which is a tidy sum, to be the bridge quarterback for at least a year in the event that, that Johnny doesn't work out. I think this shows that they're not really counting. They really aren't counting on Johnny to come in here and be the starter this year. They're going to have Josh McCown try to hold down the fort until they figure out what they can do at quarterback. And if they find somebody else in the meantime, so be it. They'll start that guy. But in terms of what they needed this year, a bridge quarterback, Brian didn't want to play that role. He doesn't, and then he doesn't want. Let's say, for instance, that Johnny comes out of rehab and he's doing great, and he can start after 6 or 7 games. Do you think Brian Hoyer is going to be happy going to the bench after 6 or 7 games and do everything that he possibly can to get Johnny ready to play? You know what? No, he's not going to want to do that because he wants to start. If Josh McCown gets sent to the bench after 6 games, he will do everything he possibly can because he's ready for that role. So from that standpoint, I kind of can see the wisdom in it. They had to do something. They had to get someone in here to play quarterback.
Mary Kay, we've spent a lot of time focusing on Josh McCown and why the heck the Browns would want him as their starting quarterback or their bridge or their mentor, however it is phrased by the organization. But why did Josh McCown pick Cleveland? Because there were other destinations, there were other teams that were looking at him.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious when you look at it. He saw this as an opportunity to start. The other teams, he may have had an opportunity to challenge for the starting job in Buffalo, but the other teams, the Jets and the Bears, they were looking at him clearly as a backup, and then the money tells you what a team thinks of you. If a team is willing to pay you $6.25 million guaranteed, that's a 1-year starting bridge contract. The clues are right there in the money. $5.25 guaranteed for this year. That says you are going to be our starter for this year. Now, if they can go out and they find that that Jake Locker is a better option for them, I hear that maybe the Eagles are looking at him. You know these things by now, who's going to go where. I don't care what anybody says. That everybody knows who's interested in who and where these guys are potentially going to end up. So if they know they're not going to be able to land one of those other guys, they have to get somebody in here. And they have to get somebody in here that can start games. And again, I don't think they're saying we don't think that Brian Hoyer is any good anymore. But for their purposes at this time, they weren't looking at him as their long-term starting quarterback of the future, and that's the kind of contract he wants.
Mary Kay, when you look at Josh McCown, and you mentioned him being that bridge guy, being a guy who is willing to come in and maybe give up that job, ultimately, how realistic is that? Because, I mean, you just said it. One of the reasons he wanted to come to Cleveland is because it was an opportunity to start. And we've kind of been down this road before in this city where a guy comes in and maybe he says a lot of the right things, but these are competitive guys. These are guys that love these jobs and want to be starting quarterbacks. Is that actually realistic that 6 or 7 weeks in, if he's playing okay, he'd be willing to give that job up?
Well, you know what? Yes, I do believe that he knows what the situation is. He came in here to start the games they want him to start and to mentor the young quarterbacks. That was the deal. Now, if it all goes the way he thinks it's going to go, I believe he feels he will be the starter at least for the whole entire season. And, so be it. But if it doesn't turn out that way, he's 35 years old. He'll collect his paycheck and mentor the other guys in the room as best he can. So he's not going to put up a fuss. He's not going to put up a stink if that's how it happens. He knows what they need him for, and he's willing to play that role.
Mary Kay, you've been all over it. Brian Hartline, Brown's a connection there. Obviously, he played at Ohio State as a free agent. He's looking other places as well. How real is the Browns' interest in Hartline?
Oh, it's very real. They would like to sign him, and from the last I heard this morning, that that the Browns are still in the running. However, he is in Texas. He is in Houston right now. We broke that story this morning. That he is visiting the Texans today, which is kind of a big deal because obviously they have huge issues with Andre Johnson, and they are looking to replace Andre Johnson. So they really need a guy like Brian. I think that they're going to do everything they can to try to sign him today and not let him get out of the building. So I think it's going to be tough, but I do think that the Browns are still in the running, and right now it's a matter of probably some of these teams getting into a little bit of a bidding war for him. The Bears still want to sign him. They might have to release Brandon Marshall. Yep. So, the Dolphins, who really aren't interested in him anymore, did him a favor by letting him go before all these other guys hit the market.
Mary Kay, let's circle back to Brian Hoyer, because Chris and I earlier were trying to figure out, where could this guy end up? Now that Buffalo has made a trade for Matt Castle, of course, the Browns went with Josh-McCown. In Houston, it sounds like Ryan Mallett is the guy there. We're trying to find places where maybe Brian Hoyer could land and have a chance to start. Where do you think he's going to end up?
That's a really, really great question. I really don't know at this point where he's going to end up. When I was at the Combine, I heard that possibly the Rams might be interested in because they're looking to add to their quarterback pile. In fact, their GM Les Snead talked about, hey, why not try to do sort of a starting pitching rotation type of thing with quarterbacks. And you know what? I've always felt that people, and you guys have probably heard me say this before, people get too caught up in, this guy has to be the starting quarterback and you can never, take him out for a game and start somebody else and go back. I don't believe in that either. Why not play just like you would for any other position? Play the guy that gives you the best chance to win that week. And, I could see them adding to their quarterback pile and maybe taking a look at Brian, and who knows, he might have an opportunity to start some games there. Not really sure where else right now. Like you said, in Houston, I think they're going to be pretty committed to Ryan Mallett. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, I hope Brian finds a great opportunity. Obviously, he did a great job for the Browns, and it's very unfortunate that he doesn't get to continue that here. But for their purposes, if they're not going to view him, as their quarterback of the future, then he should go find another opportunity to do that.
Mary Kay, you mentioned Houston and you mentioned Andre Johnson when talking about Brian Hartline. Is that an avenue that the Browns would be willing to go down or no?
I don't see it because, how many times has Ray Farmer told us you don't need the multi-million-dollar bank-breaking superstar receiver to win in the NFL. I can't see them doing it. By the same token, I can't see Andre Johnson wanting to come to a team that isn't going to win right away. If he has an opportunity to go somewhere, it's going to be a team that's a good receiver away from making it to the playoffs or the Super Bowl.
Mary Kay, last question here. Looking at free agency, an area of need for the Browns is defensive line. There's guys out there. Of course, there's the big money names like Ndamukong Suh, but there's also a guy like Jerry Hughes who might not stay in Buffalo. They didn't tag him. If they can't come to an agreement, he could reach the market. There's guys out there to beef up this defensive line. Do you think the Browns will go after any of them?
They may kick the tires on a couple of guys. I had heard that they were not going to go after Jerry Hughes, but you don't really know for sure until free agency hits. But someone had mentioned to me that really wasn't kind of on their radar at this point. Now, again, that could totally change. I don't know that to be 100% true. So, I think that they will sign probably at least 3 other players. It almost looks to me like Hartline's going to end up in Houston, the way this is going. I would anticipate the Browns will sign at least 3 other guys that can come in and be difference makers. And to me, that's kind of a big splash in free agency. I think they will make one, even though they're saying that they won't.
All right, it's the early stages of the offseason, Mary Kay, but it's time for stay or go. Are you ready? The Browns have a number of different guys that are free agents. I want to get your gauge on how the Browns feel about these guys right now. Ready? Mm-hmm. All right, Buster Skrine, stay or go?
Wow, right now I'm going to say go, just because I think he can make $7-8 million. Are they going to want to pay him that? I'm not really sure.
Tashawn Gibson, stay or go?
Stay. Again, he's restricted, so they don't have to, really worry about losing him, but he will stay.
Jabal Sheard, stay or go?
Wow, you know what? I'm going to say go. The closer you get to free agency and these guys are unsigned, the likelihood of them leaving increases greatly.
Jordan Cameron, stay or go?
I'm going to say go.
Wow. Ataba Rubin.
That's unfortunate, the Jordan Cameron. I really wish that they could have found a way to make that happen, but I think probably once he hits the market, he probably will go. Ataba Rubin gone.
Wow. That's a lot of talent coming off that team, Mary Kay.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. So they're going to have to find ways to replace those guys, and they're going to have other guys step up into some of those roles. But, the one guy I really think that they are going to have to try the best they can to keep would be Buster. I mean, if you have to pay Buster, $7 million a year, then, you might want to go ahead and do that, because you don't know what you have in Justin Gilbert yet. You just don't know if he's going to be able to do anything for you. And you need at least 3 really good cornerbacks. And, and right now, they wouldn't have that if they don't have him.
All right, Mary Kay Cabot, our Browns beat reporter. Thanks for the time, Mary Kay.
Thank you, guys.
I'm with her on Buster Skrine. I mean, it's crazy to think about the conversations we've had about Skrine over the years.
Right.
But if you let him walk, you're putting a lot on Justin Gilbert. Maybe you have to go out and find somebody else in free agency. You can't draft another corner high, and there aren't really any that are worth one of those 2 first-round picks, considering the other needs this team has.
Right.
They might have to pony up and pay Buster Skrine.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem. If you look at last year's cornerback class, Dan, and the 4 or the 5 guys that went in the first round, this year's cornerback class, you don't have that kind of depth. If you ask Mike Mayock, Todd McShay, Mel Kiper, they're going to tell you that one of the worst positions in this year's draft is cornerback.
All right, let's talk baseball. Our guy Paul Hoynes, our Indians beat reporter, is in Arizona at spring training. Spring training games are underway. Hoynesy, how are you?
Good, guys. How you doing today?
We're doing well. And look, the Francisco Lindor train is moving right along. He made his Cactus League debut yesterday for the Indians and had a couple hits, had a nice play at shortstop. It's only natural if he keeps this up, Hoynesy. Can this guy make the roster?
I still think, Dan, it would take a set of unusual circumstances for him to make it up. I think, Francona said it best yesterday. The only people that get carried away with the early spring training results are writers and guys like us, and, we buy into the hype a little bit. And I think Lindor realizes that, but it's exciting to watch him. And, I think if he makes the club, it would, Jose Ramirez would either have to be hurt, traded, something like that, or not performing well. Lindor would have to have a spring, an off-the-chart spring. It's possible, but not probable.
All right, Hoynesy, why is it that they have the stance that they do on Lindor? Is it because they don't want to rush him, they're worried about his psyche? Is it because they want to have him in club control for longer? Is it because Jose Ramirez is still, in their mind, a better option at shortstop and they want to see what he has? What is it about Francisco Lindor and this team that makes it nearly impossible for him to make this roster right now?
I think it's a little of all those things you touched on. I definitely think the arbitration clock comes into play. I think he's only played 38 games at AAA. He struck out a lot last year at Columbus. They'd like to see him, just get some more seasoning. They also like what Ramirez did last year, especially filling in the number 2 spot, how he solidified that defense after Asdrubal Cabrera was traded. So it's all, I think it's all that thing, all those things you mentioned mixed into one.
Hoynesy, Carlos Moncrief is a guy that had a big day yesterday as well. He's got some power numbers in the minors. Is this a guy that has a spot on the Indians roster? Maybe not out of spring, but at some point this season, could Moncrief play a role?
I think he could, Ken. I mean, he's a very interesting guy. Big, strong guy. He can run. Great arm from right field. He's a converted pitcher, and you can see that every time he lets the ball go. I think he had close to over 30 assists in Columbus last year, set the franchise record. He can spray the ball around. Didn't have as great a year in Columbus as they thought he would. The year before, him and Jesus Aguilar tore up at Class AA Akron. One's a lefty, one's a righty hitter. They really like that combination. And Moncrief seems to be maybe making a little bit of a move ahead of Aguilar in that regard.
When it comes to the starting rotation, Hoynesy, this spring, being there with the Indians, what is it that you're looking for?
Well, I think one is Gavin Floyd healthy, and we haven't seen him pitch yet. I think he's going to throw a B game or a pen, a simulated game Sunday. So that's going to be interesting. Because if he's healthy, that kind of locks down the top 4 spots, and then you see the competition for the 5th spot. So I think that's key. I'd like to see how Kluber handles the workload from last year. He was sick yesterday, threw a bullpen today, so he's still on schedule to start Saturday. And you just want to see who's going to emerge out of that number 5 spot. Is Salazar ready? Is he past being babied through spring training like he was last year? Where's his arm? Tomlin he pitched yesterday, gave up a home run right out of the box, but where does he stand? He's stronger this year. T.J. House, Zach McAllister, even Bruce Chen. So that's going to be fun to watch.
All right, Hoynesy, it's a month away from opening day, but give me your best guess on how you think this rotation shakes out, 1 through 5.
I think it's going to be Kluber, Carrasco. If Floyd is healthy, it'll be Floyd, then Bauer, and I've got to go with Salazar, guy that throws 99 to 100. Mm-hmm. Just coming out of the box, he's got an option left. So if he fails, they've got plenty of depth below him.
Holy moly! Did you say Carrasco too?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that just kind of hit me, Hoynesy. I guess I haven't really been paying that much attention. I mean, I'm thinking about a guy who started last year in the bullpen, who's going to be the number 2 starter in this rotation on a team that has, playoff aspirations. That's shocking to me.
I know, and, we've been fooled before. I mean, I've been fooled so many times by this guy. You hate to, but I'm taking the plunge into the deep end there. He pitched so well. Fedor, he pitched so well coming down the stretch last year. Those last 10 starts, and that could be fool's gold. But he backed that up with 2.5 months of good work in the bullpen too. So I think this guy, he's 29, 30. He's out of options. I think he's got his confidence. He signed a decent contract with these guys. Mm-hmm. I think he's ready to emerge.
Hoynes, you look at the outfield, and there's someone in the comments asking this question. With Brandon Moss now in the fold, and of course Michael Brantley, Michael Bourne, That outfield is crowded, especially over in right field. Is there room on this roster for two guys, Ryan Rayburn and David Murphy, for both those guys to be on the roster?
No, I don't think so, Dan. I think one way or the other, they're going to make a move, or somebody's going to get their feelings hurt, or somebody's going to get traded. I just don't see how you fit all those guys on, especially, with Francona, who likes to manipulate that bullpen and maybe open the season with 8 relievers. Somebody, that costs a position. That's going to cost you a position player spot. So, I'd really be surprised if both those guys are on the team come opening day.
Ultimately, Hoynesy, obviously the offense and the lineup matters, but let's be honest, this team is going to go as far as its pitching can take it. Is that pretty much a safe assumption?
Yeah, I definitely think so. You saw they played very well after the All-Star break, and they weren't even averaging 4 runs a game, and that was purely because of the rotation and the bullpen. And pitching wins in this game, especially in this era. And the Indians are in, they're in position to have a very good staff. We know what kind of bullpen they've had the last 2 years, and we really got to look at that rotation coming out of the All-Star break last year. If everything goes according to plan, I think that's going to be the engine that drives a club.
I know that the Indians aren't the Tigers. They're not looked at like the Tigers, and the Kansas City Royals went to the World Series last year. But it seems like a lot of people nationally are expecting big things from this team. And I think internally it seems like the Indians are expecting big things as well. How do you think they'll handle being the hunted?
That's a great point because, I've seen these guys, teams in the past, not this team, but I've seen Indians teams with expectations, come out of the box and kind of fall on their face. I think the good thing is, they've got some veteran guys here. It's not just young guys trying to emerge. You've got Bourne and Swisher. You bring in a guy like Gavin Floyd. You bring in a guy like Brandon Moss. Just to settle things down, you've got a veteran presence in the bullpen with Zibzinski and Atchison. So I think that helps, and that'll help keep things calm. And I think Francona does a great job with that kind of thing. He's been there. He's managed teams that have had a lot of expectations placed on them, and he's handled it.
Yeah, it's not Eric Wedge and Manny Acta sitting in that dugout. It is a guy like Terry Francona.
Right. Yeah, and that's important, I think. Yeah. You have to have guys that are going to stay the same, that are going to stay consistent as a manager, that they're not, if one thing goes wrong, it's not like a 5-alarm fire. So that plays a role in this thing.
I still remember Manny Acta in the midst of like an 8-game losing streak. It's okay, I just get in my car, I drive home, and everything just fine. I don't worry about 8-game losing. I'm not going to throw no table, no chairs. I just drive home in my car, and we'll be fine.
We got the improv here.
You remember that, Hoynesy?
Manny had him in contention. I think this is his second year. They were right there, and they just fell off the cliff. So, I don't know.
All right, Hoynesy. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, guys.
We're going to do a Sports Insider one day. It's just going to be Chris Fedor doing imitations of former Indians, Cavaliers, Browns, coaches, managers. It's going to be fantastic.
I just remember asking him the question after one game, saying, "Man, you don't seem to get upset. You're not throwing anything. You're not pounding Gatorade coolers. I don't need that attitude to succeed." It was so funny. I was just like, all right, man. All right, maybe you do.
The thing about Francona, I was talking with Terry Pluto about this on our podcast this week, is, you've covered the Indians after they've lost with Francona, and he might not get angry, but man, it looks like his dog got hit by a car after they lose a game. Right. It could be a game in the middle of June, and you want to go up and give him a hug.
Yes.
You can tell that the losses sting this guy. That's what comes from a guy who's won a couple rings and wants to win one here.
Might be your difference there. Maybe, possibly.
All right, that'll do it for Sports Insider. He's Chris Fedor. I'm Dan Labbe. Thanks to Mary Kay Cabot, Joe Vardon, and Paul Hoynes for joining us. And join us again next week at our new time, noon. Thanks for watching.